Good evening and welcome to the DPX. I am Larry Vogel and I will be your host tonight. Welcome to our December 14th meeting, which makes it officially the last one of the month for DPX, or last one of the year. Come on, give me a break. It's always the last one of the month because we only do one a month. So yeah, this is our last one of the year. But I don't even have off the top of my head how many years we've been doing DPX, but it has been a while. Don can attest to that. He was there day one. Fred was probably there close to day one. Paul Lawrence probably was too, huh? So
I was a bit afterwards. Fred brought me in.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know, maybe 10 years.
Yeah, I'm gonna say
I've never forgiven you, Fred.
Thank you so much, Fred.
all right.
And,
And
Paul came a few months after me.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, Beat-Up's got me at 10 years, so yeah.
wow. All right, so we'll be well. We didn't officially start like in January, so it's not an official. I don't even know when, or I'd have to look at my. Maybe if I looked at my DPX page,
Is it 2012, maybe?
that's possible. Oh, it's gonna make me log in.
It's been a
again
minute.
at least. Well, I'll have to figure that out and maybe slip it into the video or something. I don't know. All right, so announcements, the ones that Don Lyons loves. I haven't changed this date on here yet, so our DPX AI meeting will be on the 28th of this month, so a few days after Christmas, and a week or so after Hanukkah if you're celebrating. I have been pretty consistent about getting the meeting videos up on the YouTube channel, so if you're interested in looking anything up there, and there's Judy McLean. The YouTube videos are posted there. We're still doing Monday mornings, so if you're unemployed like me, show up at 10 a.m. and we do a little bit of Photoshop on the fly, along with solving world issues. We're really good at that. I can't believe how many issues we've actually resolved on Monday mornings. So there's a code there. If you don't have it or you want it, you can send me an email. I can email it to you, a link, and that makes it easier to find. It is on my website also, so you can go to the website and go to, I forget which panel it is. It might even be on the fly. There's a panel there, and the link will be there to get there. So Monday mornings, every Monday morning at 10 a.m. And our next official show is hung. We hung it last Saturday for the 2020 gallery, called From Real to Surreal, it's an interesting show because our intention was to try to push some more sort of non-traditional imagery into the show, but based on the title, we allowed room kind of for both. So from real to surreal, but we did get some really great sort of surreal images. So it's a great mix for the show. Our open house or exhibition reception will be December 19th from 6 till 9 p.m. So come on out and support all of our photographers. Also, because we've started doing online juried shows for our call for art, we've gotten quite a few people that are a few people who aren't local, but people that I didn't really know or know the names of. So it's been interesting getting a little bigger mix, I think, into the group for the exhibitions, and we're still trying to figure out what the next one's going to be. I don't have a title for it yet. I've mentioned a few times, so our Pismo Beach Alciano Dunes workshop scheduled for May 17th through the 20th. It's about half full, so there's no rush, but please rush. So, and I think that's about all I have as far as announcements go. Like open up the floor here if anybody else has any exciting things that are going on, shows, announcements, prestigious awards, magazine covers, calendar inclusion, whatever you have going. If you've been anything exciting happening you want to share, now would be that time. Don Lyons. And then there was a deafening silence. I got to get a little board that has all these little sound effects on them so I can do the crickets. Oh, Barbara, you do have an announcement. You just did a show or a little one of the art festival things there lately, right?
Yeah, we did 4 days of a booth. I shared it with someone else. It was really good.
Good.
Got lots of names from my email address and sold 5 pieces. And
Congratulations.
Can't cry about that.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was really good. I met a lot of people and really got to talk to them. And they all loved my work, which is always a good thing to hear.
That's wonderful.
So for those of you that do know or don't know, so Barbara's now in Arizona. And what town are you in?
I'm in Clarkdale, and that's what this. You had to be a resident in Clarkdale to be in the show.
Oh, really? Oh, nice.
And there's only 4,000 people in the city. So
Wow.
Probably 30, 35 artists in the show.
Wow.
Oh, that's a lot.
Very cool.
Yeah.
They've been doing that show since the 50s.
Wow.
Our present mayor, who bought one of my photographs,
Get out of town. Come on. You're already like
yeah.
hobnobbing with the mayor.
but it was her mother that started this. And so it's been in the family
Nice.
for some time.
So was
Really
it
neat.
primarily photography? Or were there other mediums?
There was probably 3 photographers. The rest were just
Wow.
different medias.
That's a small
Way to go, Barb.
sampling of photographers.
That's beautiful. I'm so happy
you.
for you.
Excellent.
It was really, and I've got another one coming up in April that will go. It's open studios, and it'll be going on from Sedona to Camp Verde.
Oh,
Wow.
It's probably an hour's worth of driving between the two.
fabulous.
And how many days? Is it a 1 day, 2 day event?
3 days.
3 days. Well, that makes it easier.
And the studio I'll be in will be in Sedona, which is kind of a nice
Yeah. Very
nice place to be.
All
Absolutely.
right. All right. Anybody else? Anybody can top that? Go ahead. All right. Excellent. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, the only one who I think, like I said, with Jean Eichelab was the only one who sent in files who's not here yet. So we'll see if she makes it in. Sometimes that means I need to check my email or my messages. And I don't see anything there or there. So sometimes I get these emails. I'm trying to get in and I can't get in. All right. So Dawn
I'm
said,
trying to get in on my iPad, but I could only do it through my phone. All the numbers I typed in were wrong.
well,
You have the. Do you use the same number each time?
yep. So, let me think. Oh,
Do you
God.
have it offhand?
No, because my thing logged me out again. I was on my meetup page and I had logged in. I can do it real quick here. So it was, oops. I think I can. Okay, so I don't know why it keeps logging me out, but there we go.
I mean, it says online event, then it gives you Google Maps. And set next.
This thing is telling me you need to put your email in, and it's right there in front of my face. See? Oh. All right, it's in. That is weird. It made me remove it and put it back in. All right, so let me get back to the little home page here.
Oh, if I add to calendar.
And I have a different idea about what. Okay, so
70297833570. I'm gonna hit it and see what happens.
where did it go?
Nothing happened.
No, and that's weird.
It's not a hot link.
Let me go. That's weird. It doesn't show up here. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, so it is. Yeah, it should be. Exchange events. Let me go back here and double check my. So the number should be. Yeah, two. Oh no, yeah, no, different. Let's see if that's correct. Why? access code. So it should be, yeah. So 234.
Wait a minute. I tried that one. 2, 3, 4. Or,
Two-
go ahead.
234 268 021.
All right, I will try it. Now I'm on go to. And do I have to put my own email address in here first?
Well, if you use, and I was going to mention to everybody, so if you do the join a meeting, join,
It's not giving me that option.
join a,
Yeah, it did before, but now I don't know why. Oh, here we go. Join a
join,
meeting. Okay.
yeah.
2, 3, 4, 2, 6,
Okay,
8,
so there's the page.
0, 2, 4.
So yeah, if you're having a problem with the link, or like, so we do use the same
It
meeting.
says couldn't find that session.
Wow, that's weird because we are definitely in that session. So, because usually you can just type this number in here on the
I'm
go.
going to try this other number that I found, 297-833-570, and see if that does.
That shouldn't work.
It did not work. Okay.
Let me try this. I will. Let's see.
Use the link
Oops.
in the email.
What are you on your phone, Judy?
Yeah, I'm on my phone talking to you right now, but I'd like to watch on the iPad so I can see
Yeah.
your images bigger.
So let me do this. I'm gonna copy this. If I send you an email, you'll get it on your iPad.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. There's this. I just sent it, so you should get something. All right. So in the meantime, in between time, we are going to start with Miss Barbara Altevers because she has to go to bed. she's ahead of us. So I was trying to remember. So you sent two of these. The tilted one is the newest one, right?
Right.
Okay. So we are going to look at the tilted one then. All right. So tell us a little bit about the image and what we need to know about something special about it.
I took it up on the Mogollon Rim, right outside of the ranger station. Met them, and they were really eager for me to send them photographs to put up. So I'm working on those.
Wow. And what kind of flower is it?
I have no idea.
Oh.
They're going to tell me when I.
Oh, good.
I wasn't sure if the background was too much, needed to be darker.
Huh? I don't think so. Anybody else? Any comments? I mean,
I think it's perfect. That's just me.
I think a lot
I
of
agree with
times.
Barb.
I think a lot of times people go to black because it's the easy choice. But I think kind of like what you've done this a lot, where you're kind of putting things at sort of that bottom end of the scale, but still leaving some detail there, so it's not just a black background.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, the fact that it shows that it was in nature, it was
Right. It's not
No.
shot in a studio or yeah.
right. I had a lot of questions on that. How did you do the lighting on them? I went, I didn't do the lighting on them.
Lightroom and Photoshop. I lit it with Lightroom and Photoshop.
Did you do that?
All right. Any comments from anybody or suggestions for Barbara?
This is one of those images that I was pretty early on in the process, before my mind gets sort of biased by a certain direction, is that I flip it.
Uh-huh.
So I like to see if it looks better left to right or right to left.
Yeah.
And of course the problem is that, and there's some technology behind this, that as you look at an image, you start to get familiar with it and you talk yourself into it.
Right.
So the flipping process can fail when it shouldn't be. But
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is something that we, discuss a lot and possibilities. And it's funny because, I mean, many times, there is that sort of logic about the left to right direction. And it's funny because it's not always 100%, right? It's like sometimes you do it and you go, yeah, no, it doesn't work. I think in this case it does work.
I prefer the first way.
I actually prefer this way this time. Yeah.
You buy one, I'll buy the other.
Which is interesting because I hadn't even thought about it because it's not it still does have that sort of, again, the movement goes from the bottom left to the upper right, so it still does kind of follow that formula. Anybody else think good, bad, ugly?
I like door number 2.
The flip.
Yeah.
Didn't even think about it.
Yeah, I didn't either because, in fact, I did a little bit of work on it, but it was only just to see. It seemed like I'll have to open it to show it because it'll actually give me a better thing here. So, and I didn't flip mine, but basically just did a little bit of more highlight rescue. So if I zoom in, I don't know how well it's going to show up online, but just felt like this wasn't blown out by any stretch of the means by the numbers. These are not blown out, but by bringing back a little bit, and I couldn't get more detail out against a JPEG. But that's the thing I would wonder: would you be able to get a little more detail into these really smooth areas? At least some kind of something there. And I mean, going back to there is some here. But going back to the raw file, would that help? And just to show, I mean, I just used Camera Raw and did a highlight rescue, but then because there was, if I turn this mask off, it darkened everything quite a bit, and actually because I think I painted on here too, even if I turn the mask off, I do get a little bit more detail, but then you risk losing that feeling of light that you have in the original. So this mask was made with a luminosity mask, in high values. So it's 6-in-1, but that would be just the only thing. I like the brighter feeling in that one, but I would just, in your original, but I would just make sure that if there was any detail that could come out of those areas, it might be worthwhile.
What were the numbers, the metadata on this?
So if I think come on. If the brightest area, so like right about in here, it hits about 252 somewhere, 3. So it gets close. Now, and I've demonstrated this little thing before that Kuiper has on his panel. This little blue-red crown thing gives you a highlight clipping warning inside of Photoshop, and so none of the whites are clipping. Some of the blacks are, but that doesn't, in this background, I wouldn't really care. But it's an interesting tool that basically it uses a gradient map from blue to red. You see in the upper right hand corner there, and then it uses a blend if function in here. And every time I see this thing, I'm always amazed by whoever thought of this. It's crazy. So all they did on this blend if mode was switch. I got the wrong ones. Let me go back. Shadow to highlight. They flipped the bottom ones so that when highlight to shadow. So basically it would be like taking a gradient map and mapping the shadows out to blue and mapping the highlights out to red. And then in the blend if mode for this underlying layer, which means the layer below here, they just reversed both sides of this underlying layer blend if function. And now anything that reaches 000 shows up blue, and anything that reaches 255 will show up in red. So it's an interesting. Whoever thought of it, it wasn't an artist. It was some engineer that figured it out. And I love engineers who become photographers. And so I just think I love it. So, but anyhow, it's a great little tool to have inside Photoshop while you're processing, because then you get a chance to be able to have that clipping warning like you have inside of Camera Raw and Lightroom. So there it is if you want it. If you don't have the Tony Kuiper panel, you could actually watch back on the on the video and kind of review the blend if function there. But pretty simple. It's just a matter of putting a gradient map layer at the top, and if you click on the gradient map, you can make these colors anything you want. But it's basically just a blue to a red gradient map from shadow to highlight, and then reversing the blend if function. So one thing I will warn you though, unlike Lightroom and Camera Raw, if you're printing this image, with a color profile, or printing it in color and not in advanced black and white mode, the clipping will print. You'll see because it's not like inside Lightroom and Camera Raw, it's really just kind of in the background. It's not really on the image. Where in this case, this color would actually print if you went ahead and printed it. So you got to make sure that you turn that off before you print it.
Well, very cool.
Yeah. So,
thanks for the warning.
yeah, you go to print it, you go, oh, how come my highlights are all red and my shadows are all blue?
Hey, Barbara, which lens did you use in these photographs?
I don't remember.
The answer would be the correct one.
Well, there we go.
It's a funny question, or not a funny question. Is that it reminds me of a story where people would ask Ansel about a popular one is to see. Does it say here the camera data focal length 35 millimeters?
I was wondering if it was a macro or what.
Just said,
No.
It doesn't say the lens, but it's a 35 millimeter. It says.
No, it probably was 70 to 105.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But people would.
Because I was just carrying around when I'm just not sure where I'm going to be and when I'm going to do. That's usually what's on the camera.
Yeah, that's great. Kind of an all-around.
Yeah.
People would ask Ansel Adams at an exhibit. They would say, "So, what was your exposure on this one?" And John Sexton had told us the story in a workshop, and he would give them, one exposure. He would just make up something, and then somebody would ask him again another time, and then he would come up with a completely different answer. And John said to him, "He's like, so." You didn't tell people what the exposure was. It was you gave him a different result for two different people, and he laughed and so he says, I usually when somebody says what exposure did you give it, he says I'll look at the image and go, it looks adequate. So
Adequate.
that could be that could be the answer from now on. And people do this a lot, like on moving water pictures, or they want to know what because they would ask me that. They go, what's the proper exposure for moving water, to get it blurred? I go, depends on how fast it's moving. Not all water is going to blur at the same rate. Depends on how fast it's moving.
Not necessarily not want it exactly the same every time anyway.
Right. Well, and you've got a digital camera, for God's sake, so bracket and try a couple of different exposures and see which one you like.
Amen.
All right. And this is from Barbara's front yard. No, I never know, but it seems like you've got.
So these are all in the same place.
Oh, okay. I jumped down to the bottom, but okay, we'll go back up in a second.
Give one.
So, does this have a place have a name? Lookout.
It's a Mugion rim.
Okay.
You're standing on it, looking out towards it.
Okay.
Arizona, basically, Phoenix.
And is there a place on?
They were having.
Go ahead.
They were doing prescribed burn while we were there. It was kind of an interesting.
Ah. So I was thinking my standard joke to Barbara. She's always got the best skies in the world. So I go, is there a place online that you can get these skies?
It was the person who critiqued it and said, "Well, it's obviously she dropped in a sky."
Right.
And I went, "Excuse me."
Yeah,
my
don't you love
goodness.
that now? I mean, You know, I've mentioned it before. You know, with all the judging that I've done, I used to make assumptions once in a while like that, and most of the time while you're doing it during the judging, you know, the people have to remain quiet, and then at the end, somebody will come up to me and they'll go, "That was the real sky in the photograph." No, I did not put the moon in. It was there. So, you know, it's like, okay, got to figure out another way to do to phrase this. So it's like, well, you know, if that is a sky replacement, you picked the perfect sky. If it's not a sky replacement, then man, you were there at the right time. so it's got to be some way to do that. But yeah, just to assume, I mean.
Which is why I'm not doing judging things anymore.
Yeah, well, I quit this year too. I've already done my last judging. It's over with. I'm done. I'm not judging anymore. So that's my decision. I'm sticking with it. All right. Anybody have any comments for Barbara on this one? And the room went silent.
It doesn't.
Full sky, Barbara, you need to sell it.
And I don't know what it is.
Go ahead, Judy. What was it?
She needs to sell her sky.
Sell the
for
skies.
stock
Yeah,
footage.
make a sky folder.
Make a lot of money.
I did a couple of things,
Beautiful.
just suggestion wise, but also now that I looked at it, I was I'm questioning this branch that comes up above the mountain range. But I made the sky a little more dramatic. I mean, it just felt a little bit flat. And I'll open this, and also I'll just show you this. I mean, this is a great technique inside of. Let me close these other ones. No, and let's save that one.
It's a really nice photograph, by the way. Mentioned it before.
Thank you.
B,
Love it.
or we'll call it. All right, so so the usual high pass contrast, but surprisingly, let me close this thing down so I have a little more real estate here on my desktop. So the that high pass contrast action that I give to everybody that I got from Mac Holbert, and the one that we normally use is the John Paul Caponegro one. It comes in at about, I think Caponegro's comes in at 50%, and the Mac Holbert's comes in at 30%. But also there's the Caponegro one's a little bit more aggressive, so I usually use that one. It has a little bit more contrast than the other one, and it's has to do also with the advanced blending mode. But this sky right now is cranked up to 100% on this, and it's funny because over the years we actually have had. I had one image we did on one meeting where I think I added 3 layers. At 100% of this mid-tone contrast, and I think on the third one we dialed it back, somewhere between 50 and 100. So it was over 200% on this
Wow.
mid-tone contrast. Now, the thing you have to be careful of, and it depends on the image, is you'll start to get halos around this bush. So you'll see I actually on the mask here. So you see the foreground doesn't need as much as I thought the sky did, but you can see where you start to get a little bit of a halo around this bush, and it's using the high pass filter, and that's what happens. And so I ended up doing a mask so that it basically just kind of transitioned from here up. So there are certain parts of the image that couldn't handle that 100% adjustment on it. I don't know, what was this? There's Osea. Well,
Yeah,
So that was strictly,
background.
go
so
ahead,
that was
Judy.
strictly the high pass thing, and no other contrast or anything.
That's just the high pass filter right there, yeah, at 100%.
Well,
So the way it normally
100%.
comes in, yeah, I think it would normally. I think the Caponegro comes in at 50%. So that's kind of it there, and there's the 100%, and again the mask that's here tapers off at the bottom, so it doesn't give you that halo problem like this would show. So
What does it do to the
so
noise?
you use this.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Judy.
So for people that don't have
Yeah.
have it in their library, we could just go to render high pass and crank it up.
no, so there's
There's other.
advanced blending mode in here so that it doesn't add contrast to the shadows of the high value, so it's just a mid-tone contrast. But if you're interested, just send me an email and I'll send you the action and you can put it in and use it.
Huh.
Yeah, so really nothing. It doesn't add much to the noise at all.
Okay, that's
Sometimes it could. I mean, if you're adding that much contrast, sometimes it could amp up the noise, and you might have to do a little bit more noise reduction. Oh, you know what? No, let's see. Wait a minute. I had that turned off. Yeah. So I actually tried. There were two different things. So I actually tried this other sort of a luminosity mask for midtones, but I actually liked. Let me turn that off. I liked this result better. So this one I didn't even use. And then the other technique was for the this foreground grass, which I also thought looked a little bit flat, and so I used again the great, and you could do this without the Kuiper panel, but so this is a burn layer down here to burn in shadows, and then this is a dodge layer to dodge highlights. And so the way this would work on the Tony Kuiper panel is you would make a luminosity selection. So say shadows first. So I gotta figure out how far down the scale. So if I start out at 1, that's too much. 2. So I'm only looking at the foreground, and I probably use this number 2 here. I should write it down when I do it, but yeah, it had to be the 2 because this is too dark. This might work. I think it was the 3. So yeah, using the luminosity mask number 3, and then he has all these shortcuts in here, so I can output that to a burn layer. And so when it does that, it takes that selection and hides it. So I do have a selection made from that shadow mask, and it automatically creates a gray layer filled with soft light. It automatically selects the brush, automatically puts black in the foreground. And I started out at say 30%, and I got a soft brush, and I think I do. Yeah, so I have a soft brush. So with that selection, I'm painting through a selection, and it needs more here than on the far right. And so each time I go over this, it's going to burn in those darker shadow areas. So if I turn this off and on, that's kind of the effect. And if I put this layer back to normal, so you can kind of see what it's doing. It's burning through that selection, and so the things that are the darkest are going to this was my darken layer, yeah. So it's going to make that layer darker, and so it was on soft light, and you could switch it to overlay if you wanted to see if it's, because sometimes overlay is a little more aggressive, but so the action that he has makes it a soft light blend mode. And then you do the exact opposite. So I'm going to deselect that, and then go up into the luminosity masks. I'm going to select the high value this time, and then start closing it down step by step. And I can't go very far because they disappear very quickly. So I might have even used the number 1. I don't remember. So then from there, I would say now I want to create a dodge layer. And it does exactly the same thing. Creates a gray layer with the... let's see. Something happened here. Let me do it again. What happened here, I was talking while trying to do it. So, number 1, I want to output it as a dodge layer. There it is. So made the selection, dodge layer, selects white as the foreground color. And this I might drop down to say 20% just to slowly do it. And this way, when I dodge in here, it'd be that you could use the dodge tool and set it to light, to shadows and high values. But I think this is just a little more accurate because you have more control over what you're calling these lightest values. And so again, if I were to put this back to normal just to look at it, you can see what it's doing. So I'm painting through the selection and using that to lighten and darken. And this one is so his dodge layer is in overlay mode and the burn layer is in soft light mode. And you can use either one of those modes on either one. But yeah, so that's what I ended up doing for those 2 adjustment layers down here. to lighten and darken shadows and highlights in that area.
So were you painting with black on one and white on the other?
Yeah, and that's why they're separated. So you could try to do them both on the same layer, but the problem is like, so again, if you look at this in normal, you couldn't. It would be really hard to paint in the same area, both ways. And plus, it depends on how. It's better to have them separated rather than doing them together.
So you painted the exact same places, but with opposite.
And opposites
Oh.
and different selections. So the first selection was a shadow. So that would
Right,
darken all of those things. And then the second one was a high value. So the shadows are all black here, so it would then lighten all the whites. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great tool. I mean, there's a lot of ways of using it too, but it's like it's a great sort of a go-to, because just to burn and dodge in an area, sometimes you end up lightening up the shadows more than you want to, and so that's how you get sort of that control. And yeah, you could do an entire mask and a curve adjustment layer, but you only want to use this part of it anyhow, so that's kind of the advantage of doing the burning and dodging through a selection. Yeah, great image. I like it a lot, but those were my suggestions. Any comments from anybody else? I love that sky. Jeez.
I have a question about on the camera left side, the two little branches that are sticking up there, right there. Yeah.
So I did mention that. I didn't do it on mine, but that's funny. I mean, this is one of those things I think that's absolutely true. Is the funny thing was that you hear people when digital came along was, the great thing about digital is, once you've processed the image, you're done. You can just print it every time. It's like, yeah, every time you have a chance to print an image again, or even just open it and look at it again, a lot of times you'll see things you haven't seen before. So, I would at least consider to see, what can be done or what if it helps. And so there's 50 ways to do this thing. I think now, this new removal tool does a pretty decent job, but again, it's not 100%, but it is an AI function. So it tends to do maybe a little better job than maybe the healing brush or the other effects that we have. Now, there's two ways to set this up. I have this box up here unchecked that says remove after each brush stroke, so I have to actually enter the what I just did, and that could be handy, like if I wanted to pick up and maybe do this one at the same time, rather than letting it do it each time I did a stroke. So then I only have to wait for it to process one time. And, it might do it and you might go, no, that looks bad. Or,
There we go.
This is the thing about any of this. It's just, it was like I said, this is really slow, probably because I'm online right now. But it was like, the content aware fill is like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So that's not a great job. But sometimes, like, this is one of the things that this tool does is like, so even though it kind of messed up the top of the mountain here, I can come back and do just that edge of the mountain, and it should fix the top rim of the mountain. And as long as you're not screwing up Half Dome or El Capitan or something, nobody would know whether you did. So so there's sort of the before and after. And again, I might go back and be a little more fix this up here, maybe even a little bit more. There's a little light spot there, but so let me zoom back out, and does it help? The other thing you have to be careful of too is because this high pass contrast actually uses an image that's made from your image. So if you go back and do retouching after you've made this, you can get halos from here, but because I've masked out that area of the photograph, it's not showing through. So if I turn that off, let me see if I go up to this mask and turn the mask off, and yeah, so there's the ghosting that's in the high pass layer. So I'd need to redo that mask. Anyhow, better or worse? I mean, I would do a better retouching job than that, but
Well, I think it's improved.
Yeah, but I would do a better job than that. So that's worth noting.
Yeah.
Say yes. And then this one here. So tell us about this one.
Same location, just a different part of it.
5 feet to the right. No.
Yeah. The smoking rim goes on forever.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, one of the trails we were on.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any comments here? To share or not to share? Touche. All right. Everybody's gonna be quiet tonight. So I kind of did some of the same stuff as I just did a. So let's see if I don't like the way that's changing back and forth. So there's that to that. So it's just a little more contrast. The thing I had to be careful with on this technique was to when I adjusted the contrast, I did use a luminosity mask. So this curve adjustment is pretty, it feels pretty radical, but because you're doing it through a luminosity mask, there's some, you can be a little more aggressive with the shape of curves and the strength of your actions. But but at the same time, it's like if you look at the brightest parts of the rock on this one, it is held back quite a bit in here. But I also then made a secondary one just to make sure that those areas were not getting bumped up. So if I turn this mask off, you can see that brightest rock. Oops. So with the mask, is that Gene? Somebody coming in? Wow, 4 people. There's no way 4 people are coming at one time. We've been hacked. Anyhow, so that just adds a little more contrast, but protects those highlights. Any comments here? Mike?
I like the intimate landscape better than the big broad landscape.
Ah. Oh,
This is really nice.
Mike Jocelyn, is that your name? Welcome. All right. Any other comments for Barbara on this image? Go back to here.
Appreciate it.
I don't know if I could, I don't know if I could say I like it better or, I mean, it's definitely different. I mean, that was kind of, I think one of the things that for me, I mean, like many, many years ago was, watching sort of John Sexton come up on the heels of Ansel Adams, who did a lot of these sort of grand landscapes. And then John's, was more focused on these sort of more intimate landscapes like this. And his first book he put out was called Quiet Light. And it was all about looking for those kind of scenes where there's no direct light or harsh shadows anywhere. And that light worked really well when you did longer exposures and the reciprocity effect on film and all that. So just two different, I think for me anyhow, just two different kinds of images. I'm a fan of both of them, but I do kind of like we see so many of these, again, these big, giant, grand landscapes are all over the internet. And I did make that comment one time to somebody. I said, where has all the intimate landscapes gone? Everybody wants to do this, this big, huge, grand landscape, making a statement. And sometimes, yeah, these little intimate things are nice too, I'd say. All right.
It's hard
I
here.
don't know what color flowers were originally, but since they all look white,
Right.
it really goes with the rocks. It has a really nice sort of abstract design in there.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast with the trees and bushes and stuff. So I really like it.
Thank you. They were yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, probably.
The other thing, I didn't look at this a minute ago, but I think the other thing too that I would consider, let me see here. So let's look at the info palette and I just want to kind of see the dark. Oh, we're gonna be on the image area. I want to see the darkest values in here. 16-ish. This looks pretty dark. 8. So that goes down pretty good. So that was my only other thought, was thinking about because there's this great sort of line, and Barbara, you do I think a wonderful job of that, sort of not being afraid to make things dark to make the bright things stand out. And there's this sort of great line that happens around these foreground trees that separates them from the background trees. So again, using masking or any kind of a curve, if I'll just try adding just a curve to start with, and on the curve, and I'm gonna go ahead. Just for grins, I'll run that little Tony Kuiper action to put that clipping warning at the top. So as I adjust this curve, I want to see where the clipping comes in, right? So I'm just going to grab the shadow. So it comes in very quick, right? So right about, those are very small, in there somewhere. So the best thing you can do then is you look at the input-output numbers here. And so a value of 6 has now become 0. So these are, there is pretty good contrast back there. Pretty good blacks back there. That just the idea that only has to move a little ways before those blacks become zeros. So that's one thing. The other thing too would be, again, going back to luminosity masking and looking at the shadows. And we're kind of looking for the deepest, darkest shadows. So let me see as we come through here. And this could be another situation where so you can go quite a ways down. So I might go with this 5. I would go with the 5 value. So I'm looking for the darkest areas in here. And now the thing about this luminosity masking too is you can always, in this case, I could grab a levels adjustment. And that's not a levels adjustment layer. It's a levels adjustment to actually adjust this mask. So I might want to open up the mask on the lightest areas, and then I could darken the mask in the darkest areas. So I add a little bit more contrast to the mask. So these areas will have a whole lot less effect, and these will have a little bit more. So at that point, I could do the same thing, as I could output this as a burn layer, as a gray layer set to soft light, and there's an active selection. So on his panel you'll see this little zebra stripe means there's an active selection, but it's hidden. And so if you wanted to, you could make it that's the reselect. You could make it visible, but that's annoying because you can't see how to do the shadows. So that's why his action automatically hides them, and then it gives you this little indicator just to remind you do have an active selection. So on this layer now, I have black paint selected. I have a brush. I'm at 20%. I might try going to 10 because this probably is going to move fairly quickly. And I'm going to just I'm going to hold the mouse brush down and do kind of a single pass in these areas here, and then maybe over this area is actually pretty dark. It's kind of this in here, and I'm gonna kind of do the same trick here where I'm gonna do, so let's see how much that darkened it. Not a lot. So let me take it up to 20%. That did a little bit. I'm going to go through it again. Okay, let's see that. Pretty subtle. But then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to deselect that. And then I'll go back into the luminosity panel, and I'm going to look for those values. Now, those are going to be pretty tricky in the sense that, see, even on a 2, there's not a lot of separation in that area. So they're very deep in the shadows. But so what I really would like to do is add some contrast there. So what I may do instead is, let me go back to this shadow. I'm going to go here. So I'm going to take that, and I'll try doing the levels adjustment again. And I'm trying to create a mask. It doesn't look like there's anything there because it looks like, the lights one looks just like your black and white image. So I'm going to open up the mask, and I'm only looking at those trees back there, and make sure that the blacks stay dark. And then I'm going to output this as a dodge layer and see if I can now lighten up the edges of the tree. So now I'm going to be painting with white 20%, and now as I paint over these trees, I may have to go a little stronger, but we'll see. So 2 or 3 passes there. And yeah, pretty subtle, but it works. So I might go a little bit more, still at 20%. I might try to hit these up here. And it's always better to kind of sneak up on that kind of stuff. But I might come over here too. I don't know if there's anything in there that'll lighten up. But the great thing about using this kind of technique is, I mean, you can see I've actually, if I zoom in there, I've actually lightened up this corner quite a bit, right? And now if I turn that off and on, I've been able to lighten those values without graying out the blacks, because we're burning through that selection or dodging through that selection. So let me turn that off, deselect, and then all right, so if we look at those 2 layers together, sort of a before and after, it just adds a little more dimension into that back end. And the great thing, I mean, like any layer is, so if I got this a little too strong, one thing that Kuiper did on his panel, because it kind of works really cool with both of these kinds of layers, is there's automatically a gray brush added here, which puts gray in the foreground, and it's actually right at 128, which is the same fill that you have here. So if you want to reverse this effect, you can again just start painting back over these areas a little bit with that gray value, and you'll be able to reverse the effect a little bit. So it's either that, or you could also pull back the opacity. So let's go close and save. Yes. Yeah, it's a real powerful tool, and it works as well. Oh, I thought I turned off that other layer. It works as well with color as it does black and white also. Oh, there it is. I thought I turned it off, but I didn't. I wanted to get rid of that. Now, I always make sure that I throw that clipping mask thing out when I get done, so I don't accidentally leave it on. All right. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. Got a whole page of notes.
Notes. All right. Let's go back here. And Mr. Fred Gutentag. I'm just going to do them in the order that I have them, because I think we're going to be able to get through all of these easily. All righty. What do we got here, Fred? Oh, we're not hearing you, Fred.
Oh, how's that?
That's good. There we go.
Okay.
Oh, a little bit of an echo.
Yeah.
Do you have the... There we go.
How's that?
Better. Except for now I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear you when you say, can you hear me now? But then after that, I can't hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yeah. That's weird, Fred. All I can hear you when you go, can you hear me? I go, yep. And then I don't hear you after that.
Okay, how's that?
I can hear you now. Let's see how long it lasts.
Okay, now I hear.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
sorry about that.
Excellent.
Okay, this is my surfer guy.
Yeah.
This was taken a few years ago, Huntington Beach Pier. And what I really like about this picture is the arc of the water.
Yeah.
It just has that wonderful curve. And I also like the amount of detail. Like you can really like pick out every hair on his head.
Yeah.
And I thought it worked out really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this way.
This is a gorgeous surf shot, Fred.
Yeah, that
Oh,
It's
thank
got
you.
everything.
that swish in there is really good.
Yeah, the action, the curve, the detail. It's just beautiful.
I also love this sort of transition, of that sort of, green water to the blue water back here. That it adds something, I think, to the color palette here.
I use some bicolor filters.
Okay.
Just to slightly enhance that.
Mm-hmm.
But some of it was there, but I massaged it a little bit.
Absolutely. That's kind of what it's all about, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's the fun part.
my only comment was just visually was this upper corner here for some reason. Oops, let me go back. There it is. I just did a content aware fill and filled it in. Um, it just kind of drew your eye to that corner where I think what you said is this whole wave. He's carving out that wave, so it keeps your eye on that right half of the image. So
Yeah, I think that's a good change.
I love the detail in the wetsuit. It's for me. It's always so hard to get,
yeah,
and to see that is just wonderful. And I personally, even though it would be wrong, I could do without the leash.
I wondered that same
was
thing
thinking the
too.
same thing.
Yeah, I wondered too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought about it also, but I don't know. I was just thinking, be a naturalist, a realist.
Hmm.
Like perhaps a serious surfer would look at the picture and say, "Where's the leash?"
Right. Could happen. Yeah. As soon as you, but I would, well, I don't know. I guess that's always the sort of question you could ask. But for me, it's more about it's your image, and I don't care if the surfer is missing the leash. But if it's your decision to leave it in or take it out, that should be yours. And so I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, and I thought about it and considered both ways.
Yeah,
And
be as simple.
I don't know. It's like I know a lot about bicycles,
Right.
and if you showed me a bicycle picture and it was missing an important part, I'd say, what is this? You're missing something.
Yeah. Well, so
does every surfer use a leash these days? I
yeah,
never surfed.
yeah, because nobody wants to chase.
Leashes are
Nobody,
part of the deal,
nobody
right?
wants to chase their board. I mean, every time you fall off, it's like now you got to go all the way in and get it. And so yeah, everybody uses them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great image, Fred.
Except for
well, thank you.
I think on pipeline, you don't want to be strapped to anything. I think they do. I still seen guys use them there. I actually had an incident many years ago when I was surfing. It was like I was out with a friend, and the waves just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We kept paddling further out. The waves just kept breaking further out, and I was paddling out over this wave, and I'm coming up the face of it, and I get to the top of it, and I could just feel this thing is gonna pitch me over backwards, and so I threw the board away from me further out towards the horizon, and it pitched me backwards. And for some reason, I've never broke a leash before in my life. This thing snapped, and I was glad that it did. And my friend was already out there further. He grabbed my board, and I just went head over heels underwater. I thought I was going to drown. I mean, I was like, I didn't know which way up was by the time things settled down. Finally, I find the bottom, and I push off and get to the top of it, and it's like gasping for air. But that was one instance where I was like happy that leash broke, because I can't imagine getting tossed over backwards with that thing attached to me. Tethered. All right, any other comments for Fred? All right.
Picture.
Just in case nobody has met Don Lyons, this is what he looks like.
It's when he first wakes up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Those are some brows.
This fellow was a sailor at the Tall Ships Festival in Dana Point, and I just love the eyebrows.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
Great shot.
That's the story.
Yeah, and his beard's amazing.
And did you ask him to take the picture? Do you know you were doing it?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he was posing.
All right.
I took a half a dozen pictures.
Nice. Wow.
faced a decision that, that everyone faces with this kind of picture is he had, a lot of blemishes on his skin.
Mm,
And I thought they were just getting to be too distracting. So I took the majority of them out. I left a few just so he looks human.
right.
But
Yeah.
but it's tough. You decide to leave them in, take them out, how many to leave in, so forth.
I think it looks good this way. And if we were really on camera, somebody would have taken them out anyway with some makeup. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when you compare the idea of a video where the person's moving through the image and things are happening, compared to a still shot where like now we've got a lot of time to look and focus on the face and all the little flaws and things that are there. Again, to me, it's just like any other photograph. If it's a leaf with a bunch of spots and flecks on it, you take them out because they would be distracting. And I think this works this way. Since we haven't seen the other versions, so I don't know how bad they were, but
Right.
yeah, looks great.
His forehead, in particular, was like two-tone.
Uh-huh.
He had a very dark scar on his forehead,
Ah,
and it was large.
yeah, wow. All right,
Great job.
great. I think great
Love it.
choice for
Nice.
black and white.
Nice crop, too. Nice crop, and the fact that I don't know if you tilted his head or you cropped it tilted, but that's always good in a portrait, not to have the eyes straight lined
Yeah.
up
Yeah,
Yes,
at a diagonal.
when I shoot it, I do it straight horizontally, and I try to leave extra room in the frame. And then later, when you process it, you can make it the way you like it.
uh-huh,
I never
Yeah,
really
exactly.
thought about that, but that's really good input.
yeah. Yeah, it's a great portrait.
Thank you.
so it's not really Dawn.
No, it is. I'm sticking with that.
It looks so much better. That's
It's
beautiful.
like dinosaur rock or something. He looks like a
Yeah, I thought it looked like a turkey.
yeah, or
actually.
something. Yeah, definitely looks animal-like.
How they did on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
This is Dana Point, and it's a 14-second exposure with a neutral density filter.
Nice.
The sky was there. That's the original sky,
Mhm.
but I did pump it up a little bit.
It's nicely done.
Was that Don? Was that you falling over, Don? your mic lit up. Any comments for Fred here?
That was a muffled cough.
Oh,
is what
I
that
see.
was.
Well, I hit the cough button.
It's this new headset that's picking up everything. I'll mute myself.
I didn't.
now
I
when
didn't.
cough.
I didn't think of it until now. But I was wondering about trying to put some of this color you have, like you were saying about the bicolor filters. I was wondering if the foreground would look good with some of that color in there. It just seems like kind of a stark contrast.
I have a version of this picture before I arrived at this one,
Uh-huh.
where the water has kind of like a purplish cast to it,
Uh-huh.
like the sky. And I don't know, when I just put them side by side, I like the water more neutral.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, on the curve tool, I use that neutral gray
Uh-huh.
tool to get that color in the water.
Oh, this is interesting. I didn't want to do that. I select. Oh, okay. I have So I made a selection of the sky colors, foreground to background. I was on black and white. We'll do it on a new image layer, and I'm going to try just this sort of mirrored thing to see if it works or not. The great thing about the new gradient tool is that it gives you that sort of latitude to play with it. And yes, this is going to be way too strong. And I could I don't think I want to use color. I want to use overlayer.
So Larry, explain the control knobs on the new gradient tool.
So if you click on this, say this upper one, if I double click on it, I can change the color here on the fly. So if I want to strengthen it or weaken it and accept that, I can do the same thing to the bottom color. And I can change that tone, or I could even pick a color from here. So if I want to go more towards that color, I can do a live pick from there. And then the little diamond is a transition point. So it's probably easier if I go back to the regular gradient. So and so the diamond here is to move the bottom color or the top color up or down. But the cool thing is you can do it just here live on, you know, on the fly as you're adjusting it. It's also now here inside the properties panel, so you could kind of do the same thing here too. Before, you used to have to launch the gradient editor. He doesn't want to do it. Oh, because I'm on the old mode. Well, yeah, you'd have to launch the gradient editor and edit it from there. So this, and you still have an option on the tool here. Let me get back to here. So if I want to go back and say use the classic gradient, then all that stuff goes away. And so this is the way it would normally have been. And so if I wanted to actually edit this gradient, I think if I double click here, yeah, so this would launch this, and then I'd have to also go back into here, and then here's where you would do it from. So I could add that point in here, right? And so it was really it's amazing that it kind of took that long to get it out here, because it was, but yeah, it's kind of a great tool. So the thing I think you'd want to do with this color here is so that it really kind of maybe only would appear in the high values. You have to play with it some more, but you could do that again with a luminosity mask and go, you know, say something like that. And if I put that mask now on there, and then it would need to be a lot stronger. But yeah, you could play with it and see. But I don't know. Anybody have any comments about doing some kind of a color here or there?
Thanks for sharing that update on the tool.
Yeah, and so like now, because I have that mask on there, I would actually need a stronger color, and so like somewhere in there, and then going to the orange. Now here's a great thing I think that a lot of people don't do or think about here is, like, I mean, in this case I want to drag it around, but let's say I've got the color, a proper color here, and I only want to adjust the saturation of it. So if you come over to the right here, there's a HSB, so hue, saturation, and brightness. So if I click on the saturation button, and now I move this up or down the scale, here's more saturation, but it doesn't then change the hue. I've locked the hue in. And if I want to desaturate the color a little bit more, I can come down further here. And then same thing, if I want to only change the hue, then I can drag it anywhere. And if I only want to change the brightness of it, I can go to the B and then slide this down. That way I'm not altering the hue, I'm kind of locked into a particular tone. Only thing is you have to make sure of that, because sometimes you'll come in here and go, oh, what happened to my thing? Where you're so used to seeing it this way. So you flip it back and do it there. And also on the brighten.
I like the way.
Go ahead.
I like the way this brings the color of the sky into the foreground of the picture. That's a really nice integration.
Yeah, so it actually, because my first thought is that I would probably paint out the top part of the mask so that it would just affect the foreground, but it's not bad.
I kind of like it as black and white as a separate image.
So yeah, it's
when you flip to that mask.
It is a nice black and white image too.
It's nice black and white too.
Yeah.
No, the one you had before that was really
So that was the luminosity mask.
The luminosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
anyhow, that's.
But I like the
Let's see. I
color.
wanted to see if I played with these others.
Excellent.
So overlay's a little stronger. The other cool thing that Kuiper did on his panel is like from here. Well, I can't. If they're this close together, I can flip back and forth between these two. But what he did on the panel here, he's got these shortcuts to normal, soft light, color, screen, multiply, LL. What is the linear light, overlay, and luminance. And so it makes it real easy to say, oh, I want to see the difference between multiply and overlay, or overlay and soft light. It makes it real easy to flip back and forth without having to scroll up and down this thing and see one color or the other color. So that's perfect right there. Anyhow,
It's lovely.
and then there this other. I mean, we've shared this several times, but so like in this case, so there's a luminosity mask here, and if I like, say, the strength that it's working on the foreground, but the top is maybe too strong, then there's that mask, the mask technique, as Bagshaw calls it. So you can actually put this gradient layer into a group, and so his shortcut automatically, you can choose to put a white mask or a black mask on it. So in this case, I could either make a selection, or I could go back to the gradient tool and go to foreground to background. So I'm working with black to white, and then put a gradient tool over the top part of the image, and want to go the other way. And so this would hold the top value back in this case, and then I could drop the opacity of the mask, so that, or the density of the mask, so that it would start to let the color back in again. So now the mask, instead of being from black to white, is gray to white, and that allows it to come through a little bit rather than at 100%. And then you get sort of 100% of the effect at the bottom, and then a gradient at the top. And if I turn the mask off, either way.
I like what you did. I think the color in the water and the sand looks better.
It's different. That's a question whether it's better or not. But that's the thing, is you can play with the colors forever. But that's a great way to starting with the colors that are already there is a great start. So let's say,
I'd like to see more of those colors in the shiny parts of the rock.
yeah. So again, you could go in and
Like
manually
reflecting.
paint through that mask if you wanted to.
Cool shot.
I like the image, and I thought the suggestions were great.
So if we looked at those kind of side by side, I don't know, a little over the top, but
Yeah.
could dial it back. All right, and oops, hold on. And speaking of bikes,
Right. This bike race in Dana Point, and a lot of things I like about it. I used to be a bike racer, so I may have a little different point of view than a person who's not used to looking at these pictures. But I liked the parallel lines of the handlebars. They're all on the same parallel
Yeah.
plane. And I also just like studying the faces. Having been a racer, I used to look at the faces of the people around me to kind of judge, if they look tired or strong. And like this first guy, you can see he looks very confident.
yeah,
He's happy. He's got almost a smile. Second guy, not so much. Third guy, even less. And you get to
Yeah.
the fourth guy in the black jersey, and he's hanging
he
on
looks
for
like
dear
he might
life.
be struggling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's saying a prayer.
Wow.
So I thought, I thought as a bike racer, it was an interesting
Yeah,
picture.
yeah.
I like the guy on the far right. He looks like he's saying, "I'm going to get all of you guys."
Yeah, he's starting to.
Exactly.
I'm coming.
You're right.
I'm coming for
guy
you.
in red.
He's starting to.
The guy in the red, he's planning a move.
Yeah, he's starting
Everybody
to.
up front
He's
said,
gonna do the breakaway.
Yeah, he's planning a move. He's going to come up on the outside,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
behind him, is his teammate also
Yeah.
in red, who's going to go with him.
So they wear the same jerseys then?
Yeah, they're teams.
Yeah, cool.
And typically, how many team members are out on the track at one time?
In professional racing, it's up to 9.
Really? Wow.
But in amateurs, sometimes you can't find 9 people that you'd want to have on your team. Also, last point is the upper right, where I have like a brick wall,
Yeah.
some grass and bush. That was a house,
Wow.
and
Oh.
and the house kind of takes away a little from the feel of the bike race.
Yeah, yeah. So, are you allowed to do that?
I like
I am.
no AI was used in connection
I don't
with
have. I don't have
retouching
AI.
of this image.
Yeah, no, I don't have AI. I just put another image in there.
Yeah.
Now it's called architectural intelligence,
Architect.
thinking out of the house.
Think of that. All right, it's time to move on.
You use that Vogel. Trust me.
Use that, yeah. I'm sure it'll come up, at the Christmas dinner.
Good question.
All right. Any other comments for Fred?
It's a cool image.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
it's amazing sometimes
Thanks for all your.
how tight these guys, ride together without. I mean, all it takes is.
It's just inches.
Yeah.
It's all aerodynamic.
Yeah.
What do they
The
call
guy
that?
in
They call
front
that a
breaks
peloton, don't they,
the
Fred?
air.
When these
I'm
guys are
sorry?
like in a big group like that, don't they call that a
Oh, yeah.
peloton?
There were like 50 guys in the group.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
this is like the front half of the pack.
So really, is that where the name they got for the Peloton bicycle? The stationary bike called the Peloton.
Oh yeah, yeah. The peloton is the entire group.
Uh-huh.
Like in a major race like the Tour de France, peloton would be 200 riders.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, so the Peloton is like, you're actually exercising on the bike at home, but you're not alone. You're with a whole group of people who also have the same deal going.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
wow. So now we broke down the marketing strategy of the Peloton. And you thought we were just going to do Photoshop here tonight. So there we are.
And what-
Paul Lawrence thought it was a new hamburger at McDonald's.
With cheese. I'll take the Peloton with cheese. Okay.
Wow. Are they on sale?
They're always on sale. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fred. Excellent.
you're welcome. Thanks for all the
Yeah,
input.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred.
Jean Eichenlaub's not here. Let's see what we. Oh,
Jean didn't make it.
she didn't make it.
She's taking care of her dogs.
Or they're taking care of her. All right. Well, we'll save Jean's for later, for another date. And so this is a historical moment. Paul Lawrence is going last. So,
Yay.
yay! We usually have to beat out Paul Lawrence to get into the first position, but I didn't put them in any order tonight. Oh, actually, so they would be automatically put into an alphabetical order because I didn't put them in any numerical order where I usually put in.
Wow.
All right, so this is Paul's neighborhood.
This is, I wish. It's a really exciting neighborhood.
Well, let me mention
This
this.
is a cell
So
phone photo.
what we're looking at, and everybody's going like, "Jesus, guy's a crappy photography. Can't even get the exposure right." So I always, a lot of times, I'll encourage people if they want to send in a before and after, so you can kind of see where the image started and where it ended up. So that's what we're kind of seeing. Paul's beginning image. I'll go ahead and pull up the after. We'll put them side by side, and there's a moment. This is another one that illustrates the concept of digital sucks. So it's like, you can imagine sometimes with film pulling out this kind of detail out of a underexposed transparency or something. So go ahead, Paul. School us.
So this was a cell phone photograph, and as you can see from the shadows, looking pretty much into the light. So the magic light meter in the cell phone
Yeah.
said, "Gosh, this is bright," and I'm going to expose to the gray in the foreground, which it did. This last summer, arts group that I'm a part of had a show in Highland Park. So this is in a rather run-down but up-and-coming area of Los Angeles,
Yeah.
where where all the artists and them kind of folk seem to be gathering and hanging out. This is just walking to the gallery. I saw this guy, and it just seemed like they belonged together.
Conversating.
Conversating.
All right. Any comments for Paul? This is like no topaz, no paintbrush artsy.
I think this is what you guys call a photograph, but I'm not sure what those are.
Okay.
Wow. I think I commented on this image on Facebook that his PT was broken. The topaz, something had happened. I mean, it's
Well, it'll come back, so you can be comforted on.
He lost his subscription to
I like
Topaz.
the image. There's some wonky lines in here that you might want to take a look at correcting.
Like,
Some of the vertical lines.
okay.
Things are sort of tilted to the right a bit.
Okay.
Has he been drinking again, or are they?
Again.
What? I know, only once.
Yeah.
So I was wondering on. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when I look at it, I have a question about the aluminum ladder inside the gate that the guy is leaning on, whether that should go away. I kind of like looking in, and I like the fact that it's really what it looks like, but I find that distracting. Making it darker doesn't help.
No, I was just trying to see how much of it was there in the original. And I was also looking at this door here because it looks a little strange too. Like it. Oh, I know what it is. So yeah, it looks like rescuing the shadows in here. And this is an interesting thing I think that happens on underexposed images. So let me put this into Photoshop just as an example. So if you look at looking at the numbers, looking at an image by the number, if we go into this part of the doorway, and you shot this on a cell phone too, so that's kind of like,
Yes.
you don't have the whole 16-bit file information. But again, if we look at the info palette in here, pretty much, I mean, there's some ones and twos, zeros, there's some ones, some zeros. So sometimes I think what happens is when you go to pull out the shadow detail, that there will be certain values. So if you look at, let me go to the whole big image here. There's certain values in here that, like, these values are able to pull open a little bit, but these values are not. They're going to stay at 0. So there's not enough detail in the original file to bring those zeros out of the dark. So I think what happens then is you kind of, what you're seeing here, you start to get this sort of chunky posterized look too, by trying to open up the shadow area. So same thing here, as things stayed black, other details, color came out of it. So, and it happens on regular files too. So there's always that question is, how far overexposed and how far underexposed can you be to where, how many stops can you overexpose or underexpose and still be able to pull out total detail out of, dark areas and bright areas. So yeah, that was my kind of thing too, was looking at the two images there. This image has a lot of detail on the sidewalk, and by bright, so you kind of have gone to the exact opposite extreme in the sense that here, this all looks great. It's been brought up to color value and brightness, but now this has kind of suffered from the brightness of it, and so and this, there's a couple of ways of doing it. I think this one I just put it back into Camera Raw and did a little bit of a highlight rescue. But the other thing too is, and this is again, so I could select both of these files, and I tried it earlier, and it worked okay. But again, the one way of doing this is I can select both of those files and I can say load these into Photoshop layers. Now it turns out they're both kind of different sizes, which it's not a huge challenge. But so the trick here is, let me see. Oh, this time it didn't do it. Last time when I brought these in together, it made them so that they were. So let's see what happens when I do this. So because one of them, the lower one, has been cropped, so it's a little bit larger than this one. So if I highlight both of these and ask Photoshop to auto align these layers, it's going to automatically, and I'll just use auto. It's going to automatically resize the one to fit on top of the other one. Okay, so this is where it made the difference. So now if I look at the underlying layer, this is the area that's been cropped from out of the other image, right? But now they're at least the same size. So if I now, at this point, I could go ahead and use the crop tool and just crop to the image, the smallest image, and then that other darker image, and it should snap to that. Oh. All right. So now when I turn on this layer, they're pretty much aligned, right? So I could use, I can now use the details from the darkest layer to paint into this layer. So again, I could use luminosity masking. So if I turn this layer off and go to the mask, so I'm looking for brights, maybe somewhere in there, and we'll see how much effect, because it's going to affect these other values too, but we'll see how much effect it has on it. Then I'm going to go ahead and output. Now this, and I'm not sure, maybe Don, the trick to this, because I made this layer inactive while I was building the mask because I want to see the brightest areas. Right. Okay, so let me see. So because earlier it didn't work, but if I select, so it should work now. So if I select this layer and tell it to output that mask, yeah, it did. Last time it automatically put it here, and I thought it was because I had it inactive, but it was because it selected this layer. So anyhow, at this point, I can blend the two layers together using that luminosity mask, and then maybe dial back that strength of it, and then I could paint it in or out of other areas. So anyhow, just an idea talking about blending those high values together with the other values. And so if I don't like what it's doing to the other areas up in here, I can always paint it out of the mask, or do that the mask thing where I can paint on here, brush with black, and we'll go with 50%, and I can start painting it out of these other highlights. Come on, there it goes. My brush is slow again tonight. And maybe here, bring some of that back. And so now you kind of have, at this point, some detail back in the shadow, or the high values. The other way that I did on, close that one. On the other one was, like I said, I just used this one here. I just did a highlight, went back into Camera Raw and used a highlight rescue to bring back some of that detail from this blown out file. So it's subtle, but all right. Any other comments or questions for Paul on this one? No. Someone needs to clean their sensor.
I'll get around to it one of these days. So this is from a group of photographs I'm working on about the relationship of the surfer to the wave. And this was, I think this is probably shot with my Fuji, which was 12 megapixels. And most likely, metadata ought to be there, but most likely around 1/8 of a second with variable ND on the front to allow me to get down that slow. And that's the original. And then I wasn't going to do it, but for Dawn, I put it through Topaz. And
wow.
This
I thought they kicked you out, but well.
No, they let me back in.
All right. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, that almost.
So this is.
It almost looked like the the AI effect for paintings or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely got the
Except there's
oil
more
paint
control.
look, right?
Yeah. No, that old Topaz program has a lot of
Yeah.
choices uh, of different looks, and then you can mix the looks together and fade them in and out. So it's probably what I did. This has been bounding around for a few years. And I
So
go back
I've
to it
yet
and then
to
change it.
I've yet to adopt any of the Topaz stuff, but and I've been meaning to, but do they still have these effects, or are those no longer available?
They don't seem to. This is Topaz Studio 2, and they seem to have discontinued it, so they still support it. But and who knows for how long that'll be. But the effects themselves, and there must have been 100 plus different effects, and all of the effects could then be adjusted with all the normal adjustments basically that we have in Photoshop. Plus you can adjust the size of the brush, the amount of paint that the brush has on it, how far you've gone in the painting before you stop the process. All of those things were adjustable. So it's a really sweet program if you don't care about sharpness.
Yeah.
I like this very much. I think you really captured what you were describing in the relationship of the surfer to the board to the water. I like the different shades of the green on the bottom right of the water. I think it works.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that if I had seen this that I would know that it was a surfer on a wave. It feels like it's gone so abstract.
It's
It looks like a girl in a
Yeah,
dress.
I see that too.
it's a really interesting question in terms of what this whole project is about, because the project will start off with some more identifiable images.
Yeah.
Because once people start seeing that these are surfers, then they'll know what they're looking for. If you come in the middle of it, like we're kind of doing now,
Right.
it's more difficult. But with a whole flow of 20 or 30 images, some of them start off and you can say, oh, that's a surfer on a surfboard. I get that. And then, oh, I get it. That must be kind of, oh, that's the same thing. I get it. Okay.
Yeah,
I think
you're
fine.
right. I think that the surrounding images will influence the way you see it, definitely, because it's like if I see the surfer image and then I know what I'm looking at, but yeah, by itself it might be hard to tell that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, where are we going to see this show? Do you have a?
I am wrestling with printing them at the moment. So, but then my thought is once I get it together, I'll put the portfolio together and I'll just start going up and down the coast to the surfing museums. And possibly if I can find a decent way to do it, it would be nice to make a book out of it too, because the book is really the motion picture that tells you the whole story from beginning to end. So that's the idea. And then if another gallery or something picks it up, that would be nice. But it's one step at a time, and right now I'm just trying to print the goddamn thing.
Doesn't sound like you're having a hassle with it at all. So,
I'm having a good time with it,
all right.
but it's a pain in the butt. Yeah.
What sort of printing problems are you having with it?
It's just the problem of when we look at it on a screen, the light is shooting at us, and when we're looking at it on paper, the light's bouncing off. And so to get it bright enough and with the saturation that I want on a piece of paper is a different process than it is on the screen. So what I've done is I've set the printer up. I'm printing out of Lightroom, and I can print 4 images at a time on an 8.5 by 11 sheet. And it will also print out the name of the file name of the photograph beside it, and then I can compare them as I make adjustments to the color, make them brighter, make them a little richer, do whatever I'm doing with it. And then I keep making prints and making prints and making prints. And because I want it to look as close as possible to what it is on the
Mhm.
screen when you're holding it in your hand or looking at it on a wall.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so what I did here was I brought it in and I wanted to see if again, so doing a soft proof inside Photoshop. So let me undo these. So the way to do this is you come in first here, and you want to set up the proof first, and so you want to select a profile that you're going to print from. So, because every paper has the ability or the inability to show or print certain color values, and so that we would call gamut, color gamut. And so, from the list of these are all the profiles I have basically for my 9800, and then so these would be all Epson papers that come with the printer, and then these are other. This I used to have a 3800, so then these are other off-brand papers where I've downloaded profiles from. And so you can come in here and select whichever paper you use. So if I'm going to use my Ilford Gallery Gold Fiber Silk, and actually I have this one here is a custom profile that I had made for that paper. And so then this shows me, if I turn the preview off and on, that pretty much all the colors here should print the way I see them on the screen. So I'll just say OK. And what you'll notice is in the name of the file up here, the profile now shows up here because I have it now associated to the file. So there's the Epson 9800 Simply Elegant Gold Fiber. So that's the profile results. Now from here, if I go in and say gamut warning, it's going to show me the gamut warning for this particular profile. So when I turn that on, I don't see any problems. So that means in all practical sense, I should be able to reproduce everything on the image that I see here. But just out of practical experience, I know that I need to make printer adjustments to get it to print on this on most papers. And so an interesting thing that I have in here is a printer adjustment that is an action. So I put it into the My Actions panel here from the Kuiper panel. So if I run this, it automatically creates an adjustment layer or two adjustment layers. The first one is a curve adjustment with no curve made to it, but set to screen, and screen lightens the image. And then by default it's set to 25% opacity. Now some of my papers I actually have to increase this setting depending on how the paper responds to the printer and how bright or how dark the darkest values are. And so anyhow, I can adjust this screen setting. And so this is better than using a curve because it's more predictable in the sense that it's going to lighten everything by that, say 45%, or by default mine comes in at 25%, but let's just say I need that much change. Now the interesting thing about it too is, and I noticed this on, I think it was a video of Tony Kuiper's, he was just demonstrating using the panel, and he pulled up an action, and it happened to be a printer adjustment. I paused his video to see. So here it said printer adjustment. I saw a curve with no adjustment added to it, and that it was set to screen, and it had an opacity of 25%. But there was a mask over here, and I could look at it and go, oh, so it looks like a negative, which means it's a highlight mask in the sense that it's going to protect the brightest areas of the image and allow the adjustment to affect the darkest values the most, and then the other ones sort of in between all that. Because I had always wondered, what if I have to, let's say I have a paper that just doesn't respond really well, I got to take this up to about 80%. And without the mask, these brightest areas almost start to, on some images they will, blow out to 255. And so this became the answer to that problem, is that the brightest areas don't need that adjustment as near as much as the shadow areas do. So anyhow, he created an action that did that. So I just copied it because I had already had an action that gave me the screen adjustment at 25%, but I didn't have the luminosity mask. So I had to figure that one out, put it in there, and create my own action. And then my 9800 printer, I use inks that I get from LexJet. And my old printer, so it predates the vivid magenta ink that was added on to the Epson printer, so that would have been the 9880 in my printer size, would have been the 9880. So they quit manufacturing the regular magenta because there just aren't that many printers that are as old as mine out there still running. So they just said, well, we're going to quit making the regular magenta, but we make vivid magenta available, and now you can turn your 9800 printer into a 9880 because it now has vivid magenta in it. You go, okay, that's great, but now none of my profiles work because they were profiled using a regular magenta. So anyhow, I added I did a bunch of testing. I added to it a little bit of a magenta change that is set to a color mode, and so I have a curve adjustment where on the red layer I've actually pulled, I mean, it's the tiniest little bit out of it. Barely will show up in this image, this up in here. So that compensates for the color cast change from my vivid magenta, and then this compensates for how much brightness it might need. So the goal is, with both of these turned off, when my print comes out of the printer, I should be able to see, it should look like this, but when I send it to the printer, I have these turned on. So that's, and again, depending on the paper. So yeah, that's kind of all of the, the proof that a printer is not a plug and play tool that just works straight out of the box. I had a friend that had said to me one time that same exact kind of like scenario. He says, you buy a camera, you buy a computer, and you buy a printer, and you plug them all in and you put them into your workflow, and the only guarantee you got is nothing is going to work straight out of the box. You got a whole lot to do to get everything to talk to each other so that you end up with the thing that you think you want. But you'll run into problems where certain colors or things are just not going to reproduce the same.
Yeah.
And then you struggle to print the damn thing. So that's it. Like this one would be a really hard print to make, I'm sure. Yeah, this is your straight version, and then I'll put the one next
That's
to it.
kind of the straight version in the middle. There was really an earlier version of that, which I think I found, but I guess I didn't send to you. This is from about 20 years ago, shot as a JPEG, and it's entitled "Woman Putting Her Makeup On in the Dark." She really was putting her makeup on in the dark. And it was an old Sony camera. It had a bit of noise. I
Did it?
ran this, yeah, a little bit. And I ran this through Topaz Denoise, and I ran it through Topaz Sharpen, and I probably ran it through Topaz Denoise, Topaz Sharpen, and I used some AI to change the yellow thing on the camera right side. But I found that that sharpening and adding denoise, if you do it wrong, can really come up with an interesting effect.
It's the Paul Lawrence effect. If you do it wrong, you...
Just push everything in the wrong direction.
Wow.
I think it's a very striking image.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just the tiniest little picky point. Is that her neck? That V on the left?
Yes.
Perhaps just bring it down a drop, just a little bit, because it distracts from her face, and her face is so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about that space there, but in some ways I kind of wonder, if it even needs it.
I think I took it out at one point and I didn't
I
like
was
it.
going to say I wanted to see what it would do, so we'll just use content aware.
But I've certainly been wrong in the past.
Well, and I was thinking that also, wow, I also kind of think these things too. So we just keep messing with it, right? Kind of just simplifying it. Because that purple orange salmony and the yellow gold together is just beautiful colors. Oh,
Yeah, I agree with all these
I
changes.
kind of like that.
Yeah, it's better.
Wow.
Definitely better.
You should have had this done for our Real to Surreal show that we're doing at 2020. This would be great for the. It's weird what it.
Yeah, it's a good image.
It's weird what it did to her eye, and then this detail on her
Yeah.
watch or whatever. They kind of almost mimic the pattern each other.
And I actually took her watch out at one point, but
Huh.
it just made this long
Right.
arm. It didn't work at all.
Huh. All right, let's say
Yeah,
that.
I like the watch.
Yeah.
I wanted to look at the. My first thought. Oh, I didn't even. I was going to do it on a. I meant to do it on a second layer because sometimes the thing you can do then is just fade back the retouch layer, and that'll take the emphasis off of that. But so there's that, and there's that. Yeah. So what's her watch look
Yeah,
like
definitely better.
originally? Oh, it's so the little stripe things are kind of there.
It's got numbers and arms on it. I don't know what the arms are for, but it's got numbers on it.
Yeah. So wait, 1, 2, 3. Wow.
Yeah, much better with the adjustments.
Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really strong image. That's cool. Very nice.
Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
striking.
You wouldn't even suspect that, in the end result here, that it even began as a photograph or something out of a camera. It's just so graphic and almost painterly and interesting.
That's the fun part about it for me.
I wonder if those two white stripes could be a different color. In her
in the eye. Well,
Yeah.
yes, they could be. So, so one of the, I think, there's a lot of ways to change colors, but I think one of the ones that work real simple to start with, just to see, is like selective color, and then just go to the whites, and then make sure you have absolute selected instead of relative, and then you can change the color real quickly. The only thing you have to be careful of is then it changes all of the whites, which just means then we just invert the mask, and then take a brush with white. Brush with white, and paint through that area at 100%. So now when we go back to the adjustment on the whites, we can make it purple. And again, maybe you want to make a selection and expand that, but it also might be that there's too much yellow in that area. So if we go to the yellows, because again we're only on the eyeball now, and then we bring up the cyan and the magenta, so it filled those in, but it puts a weird line around
Whatever
them.
you do to that,
Go ahead.
whatever you do to the eyes needs to be repeated in the watch, because the eye glare doesn't work without the watch.
Right, so we could just paint that. I painted over the arm too, but you could. That's interesting. So then back to the color here of the whites is, so we could go with that is 0. That purple almost matches everything else, but then add yellow to the magenta so we can have a reddish tone. And the cool thing in here is you can kind of darken or lighten values also by moving the black slider. Or we could go cyan and yellow, we get a green. So maybe a little too obnoxious, but we can pull back. I don't know. I think an interesting thing too would be, so let's just go with yellow. Then it kind of matches here, and you could put, I need to go back to that yellow here and reset those. There we go. And then back to the whites and just add a little bit of magenta to them. Then they kind of match the yellow goldish brick in here or whatever. Anyhow, that version 2. Interesting. It actually does look good with. I like a color in it. I don't know if I would like that color. Save as.
It may take some work, but I think white's the wrong color.
Yeah. But I think it needs to be a brighter tone. I like this kind of color in here. So it probably just needs maybe a little more magenta. Right about there is pretty close there. And then if the color or the effect is too strong, you can always dial back the strength of it. So I don't know. All right. Only Paul Lawrence would see this image and decide that it could be something more like this one. And I think that's an interesting thing, you know. I was talking to somebody the other day that I was helping, working with them, doing a one-on-one lesson with them. And they're just sort of barely getting started learning Photoshop, or a little bit past the beginning point, I would say intermediate. And on their images, when we get together, I usually ask them, what do you see in the image? What would you want to change? And they almost always have a good idea, but also most of the time it's beyond their ability to actually accomplish it. And I was telling them, I said, you know, the thing is, you're already miles ahead of the game, because you have a good vision about, when you look at your image, you have a good vision about what it could become. And you just need to learn how. And I can teach you how to do it, but I can't teach you how to see it. You know, and so there's that part of that equation. I think in the process that we're all involved in, is that ability to see an image and then have an idea of where it's going to go to, and then have the ability to do it. So you put it all together, and you know, it's pretty strong. So the person is feeling really frustrated by the whole thing. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to live long enough to learn Photoshop. It seems way too complicated. And I think anybody who's done Photoshop long enough can remember those days where you were like, there's no way I'm going to learn this thing. But you know, you just have to spend, you know, you got to put in the 10,000 hours, as they say, right? So do the 10,000 hours, and then there's this really sort of magical thing that happens where your ability is perfectly in line with your intuition, and you have this intuitive thing, like, I want to do this, and your ability to do it happens, and it just kind of works, you know, hand in hand, where the struggle to do things starts to disappear because you understand the process better. So that's really, I think, the key thing is to get both things kind of working in unison. And I think that the part of learning to see can really be helped by these kinds of meetings and photo clubs and all this other stuff, where you get together with other people and you see their images, and whether it's a straight photograph like Barbara Altiver's black and white images we looked at earlier, or whether it's something as, you know, far out. This is why I always encourage Paul to send the before and afters, because if you only saw this, you wouldn't have a clue where he started from. And so it's great to see these befores, and then it gives you, I think, again, being involved at a level where I'm seeing what somebody else is doing. I don't know that I myself would have said, oh, what can I do with this image? But I love, you know, in the end, once it's all been sort of pushed and things are brought together, it's like, wow, it's pretty amazing idea. And I've mentioned to Paul more than once. I said, sometimes your images are hard to critique because they are so out there, away from what a traditional photograph looks like, as opposed to knowing kind of like, here's a traditional image, or here's traditional processing needs a little more contrast, or this or that. But I also think that sometimes working on an image to get this effect to go from here to here, there's a lot of risk involved here in the chance of failure. Like, is this really going to ever become something, or is it just pushing the limits and the whole thing just kind of falls apart? And so you do enough of it, and or you have to do a lot of it in order to have a moderate amount of success with a few images. But I love the idea that people like Paul and Fred and people that bring images into our DPX nights are a lot of times pushing the edges of where they started and where they ended up. So,
Well, it's a technique that you can get rid of sensor spots and noise
all at one time, yeah. Very cool.
all at one
You don't
time.
have to worry about it at all. Yeah.
All right.
It's great.
So I think, Paul was our last one. I don't see Jean popping in, so we won't be looking at her stuff. So with that, I'll say thanks everybody for sharing your images, and for everybody who showed up tonight to listen to and also to give your opinion. I mean, that's really what the critique night is about, sharing your opinions. So that's important. My usual final slide here is, I always love to admonish this, and that's to stay creative, be inspired, and be an inspiration to others. And I think that's what more could you ask for? So thanks everybody. Again, the meetings are recorded, so the meeting will go online. And if you know anybody that might be interested in seeing the meeting, you can certainly share the link with them. So once I post it, I'll send the link out to everybody on the DPX group, and you're free to share it with anybody you would like. So until next year, so it'll be January when we get together again for regular DPX, but our DPX AI will be happening on the 28th, we said, right? Yeah, 28th. All right, thanks everyone.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, everybody.
wonderful New Year
Yeah.
and holiday season.
Good holidays.
All right, night.